Okay, let's first turn to tonight's main story. The 40-day-old marathon hearing in the country's top court on the Ayodhya title suit has finally concluded today. The verdict in the decades-old dispute is likely to be announced by the 17th of November. Let's take a look at all that happened on the court, including one of the lawyers tearing up the map that was seen to be contentious. Take a look at tonight's top story, brought to you by Anisha Mathur, our legal correspondent.
A 500-year-old title dispute that has kept India on tenterhooks, tearing its social fabric from time to time. A court battle that has lasted 70 years is finally ending. The verdict in the Ayodhya title dispute, probably the biggest in India's judicial history, will be delivered by November 17th. After a marathon 40-day hearing, the Supreme Court on Wednesday concluded the arguments on a dramatic note, 1 hour before the designated time. There was high drama in the courtroom as the 5-judge bench, led by Chief Justice of India Ranjan Gogoi, heard the Hindu and Muslim sides one last time. Hindu Mahasabha lawyer Vikas Singh sought to submit a book titled Ayodhya Revisited and some maps and papers showing Ram's birthplace. Rajiv Dhawan, the counsel for Sunni Waqf Board, objected, saying he wants to throw them away, and went on to tear the papers. Dhawan tore the documents after the CJI commented that the lawyer was free to do so if he wanted to. Concluding the arguments, the Hindu side said the Muslims gave no evidence to prove their right to land. The Muslim side countered by citing a Faizabad court order of 1886, ruling out the presence of a Ram Mandir. The Hindu petitioners claimed there was no evidence to prove that there was a mosque there earlier. The opponents countered, saying Babar gave tax relief for the construction of a mosque.
जहाँ तक हिंदू महासभा का सवाल था, हमने अपने रिटर्न सबमिशंस कोर्ट के सामने दिए। राजीव साहब का कहना ये था कि वफ ये वैलिड वफ है और हम एडवर्स पोजीशन की जो प्ली ले रहे हैं वो एक ऑल्टरनेट प्ली है, और जो भी हिंदुओं ने अकाउंट्स हुए हैं, ट्रैवलर्स अकाउंट, ट्राइफन थिलर जो मैं आपको सुबह भी बता रहा था, ट्रैवलर्स अकाउंट दिए हैं, वो सब रिलाई करने लायक नहीं है, और इसीलिए उन्होंने कहा कि जो पोजीशन था उनका एक्सक्लूसिव पोजीशन था, और जो भी आक्रांताओं ने किया है वो उनका अपना राइट था, कॉन्करर्स का राइट था, इसलिए उसको आज के इंडिपेंडेंट इंडिया में जस्टिफाई किया जाए, और उन्होंने शेर और शायरी भी सुप्रीम कोर्ट के सामने।
हमारा आर्गुमेंट, हमारी एविडेंस, हम उससे सेटिस्फाइड हैं कि वो सब कोर्ट के सामने प्लेस हो गई। अब कोर्ट को उस पर तय करना है। हम अपने जो एविडेंस हमारी है और जो लॉ पॉइंट्स हैं वो प्लेस करने में कामयाब रहे, इतना हम कह सकते हैं।
While the hearing is finally over, what happens next is the molding of relief. In this process, the petitioners give alternative options. The petitioners will have 3 days to make written submissions.
From Puranic texts to Quranic law, 16th century travelogues to 21st century archaeologists, the court is going to look into a gamut of arguments and evidences when it comes to India's longest standing and longest running court case. But with the arguments finally concluded on the 40th day of arguments, now it is all eyes on the Supreme Court to see where their lordships go with the various aspects of this particular legal tangle. This is Anisha Mathur in New Delhi for India Today.
Let's raise some of the big questions tonight. Will the Ayodhya verdict really bring lasting peace? Will the Supreme Court verdict end the politics over Ayodhya? Is the Ayodhya dispute a matter of law, or is it a matter of faith? Just some of the questions we'll raise tonight. I'm joined by Lieutenant General Zamiruddin Shah, former Vice Chancellor, Aligarh Muslim University. He's going to be my first guest tonight. I'm also joined by Sharad Pradhan, senior journalist from Lucknow, who's tracked this case for years. Advocate Irfan Engineer will join me, Director, Center for Studies of Society and Secularism from Mumbai. In the studio, 3 people intimately connected with the case. Anup Chaudhary is senior advocate and he has represented the Sunni Waqf Board. I am also joined by Vishnu Shankar Jain, who's been a lawyer for the Hindu Mahasabha. Vikas Gupta will join me, Advocate Supreme Court. Kunal Kishore is author Ayodhya Revisited and also was an IPS officer who was part of the mediation efforts in the 1990s. But I want to come to you, Zamiruddin Shah, first, because you Mr. Shah, Lieutenant General Shah said, some would say controversially recently, that Muslims must hand over the disputed land to Hindus as a goodwill gesture. This will ensure communal harmony and peace in the country. You want to explain what you mean by that?
Yes, Mr. Desai. I would like to clarify that in case of a court ruling, there will be a winner and a loser. In case we want nobody to lose, everybody to win, an out-of-court settlement is absolutely necessary and vital. Why I say this is I've explained to my community. I've told them here's a chance to win over the majority community, to have amity. I asked them, suppose we lose, then we have lost everything. Suppose we win, we will still lose because we will not, I repeat, not be able to reconstruct the mosque at that same place. And then we would have, I would say that would be abject surrender. That would be abject surrender in case we lose in the court. So now's the time to reach a settlement. It is not too late. I know that the case has been heard, the judgment has been reserved, but it is never too late to make an attempt.
You know, but the fact is, the judgment, as you rightly said, has been reserved. If what you're saying had to be done an out-of-court settlement, it should have been done a long time ago. Now when we've reached the stage where the judiciary is going to pronounce a verdict, there are unfortunately going to be possibly winners and losers. I see where you're coming from. But isn't that, in a sense, now too little too late? Have we now reached the stage where, because it is such an intensely political and polarized case, that even if you make this wish that Muslims as a goodwill gesture hand over the land to Hindus, is that really a solution?
Yes, firstly let me clarify that handing over the land which I have recommended is preconditional. The two important conditions are that this issue of mosques being destroyed, we should see the end of it. I mean, we should honor the Places of Worship Act 1991. It needs to be given greater teeth. At the moment, it does not act as a deterrent. So that is the precondition, those important preconditions. Mr. Sardesai, let me tell you that we should never lose hope. I have never lost hope. Even in the worst of conditions, we have turned things around. And the Supreme Court has said itself that the discussions can continue along with the case. The Supreme Court has agreed to allow the discussions so that we reach a sensible conclusion. So it is the Supreme Court's allowance which is giving us hope that they will accept our point of view.
You know, it's interesting the way, let me just one more time ask you this though, before I widen this debate and let you go. I want to ask you this, that do you believe that the Muslim community is really ready for what you're saying? There will be those who will say the Muslim community has been bullied into doing this. A masjid was demolished, which many believe was a criminal act. That case is still pending. Is this the time you believe that Muslims in a way must make this kind of reach out? Do you really believe that's possible in the present scenario, given the way this has unfolded?
Mr. Sardesai, let me tell you that I've been castigated by a large number of Muslim bodies. What they are not aware of is the huge amount of messages I have received of support from silent admirers who say that what we are doing is right. They are obviously not in touch with reality. I am prepared to accept castigation and being accused of being motivated. Let me tell you that I am not motivated by anything other than ensuring that the community is safe and secure and we win the trust and love and affection of the majority community.
You think you'll win it? You really think that handing over, you really think that the majority community will treat themselves as winners? Doesn't that worry you?
Well, I have hope in the inclusive character of the majority community. I have served 40 years in the army, never felt any discrimination at all, and I am certain that the nation would be prepared to give the Muslims a fair deal.
Okay, I've heard you and I hope you'll stay with us to listen at least to the other speakers, even if you don't want to interject in the debate, but listen to them. Anup Chaudhary, as the lawyer for the Sunni Waqf Board, you've just heard former AMU Vice Chancellor and a distinguished army man saying hand over the land. Is that really a practical solution? Is it too late now to even discuss that?
At this stage, I don't know how far it's feasible. And when the sides have hardened their position so much, and efforts to mediate have all failed earlier, and even now the Supreme Court tried the mediation, it has not fructified at all. I feel it may be a very good and a pious thought, but it is only restricted to being a thought.
It's only restricted to being a thought. Why don't you respond to that, sir, as the lawyer for the for the Hindu Mahasabha? Give us your perspective. Here is someone reaching out, and the way you will treat it as a triumph if you get the land. He's saying, as the general is right, there will be winners and losers in the way that you have positioned the case as a matter of faith. Is it a title dispute? Is it a matter of faith for you?
Justice Bobde has clarified very categorically by the 5-judge bench, when he is sitting in the combination of 5-judge bench, that yes, this is a question of faith, and one of the questions which the Supreme Court will decide will be the issue of
that
faith.
Is Justice Bobde's obiter dicta.
That is
I am asking you for that is his observation.
Yes.
Is it for you a matter of faith? Is it a matter of law?
It's a matter of faith.
Is it a title dispute?
It's a matter of faith and law for both of us. And what I'm trying to say is, whatever general has given the proposal before you, I don't agree with that proposal, because we want to win our case on our own merits. Whatever Babur has done in 1528 has to be rectified. It's a historical wrong, and that's what our senior counsel Mr. K. Parasaran has argued before the Supreme Court. Yeah. So we want the judgment of the Supreme Court, and whatever Babur has done by his sword has to be rectified by pen of the Supreme Court. That's what precisely our case is before the Supreme Court.
Yes.
That's not correct. I'll tell you whether it was demolished or not. The question is, even if it, supposing for the sake of argument, it was demolished.
Yes.
But if there is thereafter been a possession of the Sunni Waqf Board, once it becomes a Waqf land, it remains a Waqf land for all times to come. Now you can't go 400 years back when the statute of limitation provides 12 years for such adverse possession. At worst it could be an adverse possession. So legally, that faith I can't dispute, but legally this argument
you
is flawed.
accept it's a matter of faith as well, that a title dispute is at the end of the day to be decided as a matter of faith. It cannot be decided, you believe, on a matter of faith. But the Hindu side has made it very clear in their that it is a matter of faith for them.
As a faith, that particular sthan is a general sthan of Ram Janki,
yes,
is fine. But that can't be that can't be taken cognizance of legally and say there may be no evidence, but there is faith. That's the question.
At the end of the day, should a title dispute involve aspects as diverse as collective memory, devotion, tradition, that this is the birthplace of Lord Ram, the limitations of archaeology, should we not be sticking to which party has the land record in its favor? Isn't that what the law is about?
I'll just tell you, because this matter relates to 400 years back, precisely 490 years back, when in 1528 that ghastly act was done by Babur, invader Babur, in 1528. Therefore, today what we are trying to show before the Supreme Court with lot of evidences is Skand Puran, apart from that Aine-Akbari, which is written in 1590, then the travels account of William Finch in 1606, the travel account of Tryfenteller in 1770, the British Gazetteer of 1828, all these things categorically say that yes, a Hindu temple was destroyed and there was a mosque constructed after that. Today the question before, sir, just a minute. Today the question before the Supreme Court is that yes, if there was a Hindu temple existing, and what my senior counsel just said, that once above, always above, the question is once a temple, always a temple, no matter it was done in the slave era or in today's era.
How far back in time will we go? Of course, is another question. We could tomorrow find a stupa somewhere which also existed, but very quickly.
There was a civil suit in 1855.
Yes.
The same objection was raised at that time. The civil suit was decided against and said that this is not the Ram Janmasthan, and the puja used to go out on the outer courtyard. That is already decided. This title in 1855.
clarify?
The suit is already decided.
So
on
you
this
see
issue.
it purely in terms of a title
I
suit
see purely.
based on the evidence that has to be provided. You see it on the other hand on the basis of tradition, collective memory, the belief of the limited archaeological evidence that suggests that there was a temple on the site.
Absolutely right, and whatever Mr. Anup George Chaudhary has said on 1885 judgment, he is reading it partially. 1885 judgment says that yes, there was a Hindu temple existing and a Hindu temple is demolished, but it's too late to remedy.
I didn't say
Too
temple.
late to remedy. That's what the 1885 judgment says, and definitely our case before the Supreme Court is on belief, faith and worship. And if we have to win before the Supreme Court has to give a verdict that whether there is a Swambhu deity or not.
Okay.
Like Kailash Mansarovar is worshipped, Ma Ganga is worshipped, Kamatgiri Parvat is worshipped. So therefore this land is of utmost sacred place to us, because on this place we say Lord Ram was born, he was
Okay,
incarnated.
we've heard two sides. I want to bring in Irfan Engineer, because Irfan Engineer, the way this is playing out at the moment, you're seeing the way it's playing out, Sharad Pradhan. It clearly seems to me that we are now in a stage where, as General Shah put it, we are dividing people. Like it or not, people are going to get divided. There are winners and losers. Today the Hindu side, the Hindu Mahasabha is making it very clear they want a judgment, they want victory. The Muslim side on the other hand is also making it very clear that they see this as a title dispute that must be settled on precedence. So effectively, there are going to be winners and losers.
Rajdeep, can I put
Just a minute.
Absolutely. You are absolutely right, Rajdeep. And this has been the attitude of the Hindu side right from the beginning. Even during the course of this whole case, while it was going on in the Supreme Court, in so many debates, whenever it was asked that will the Hindu side ever say that in case the verdict doesn't go in their favor, will they still accept the judgment? The reply was never yes. It would always be, they would say, no, the judgment has to come in our favor. They are going on this premise that the judgment has to be in their favor. While on the Muslim sides, irrespective of who the representative was, they always maintained that even if the judgment goes against us, we are going to accept it. Now one more thing, Rajdeep, I want to point out. They talk of all kinds of records, but these people have not been able to give a reply. I've asked top VHP people also that why is it that Tulsi Das, who was the biggest ever devotee of Ram, who lived in Ayodhya, and barely 40 years after Babur, he does not mention a word about demolition of the temple. Somebody like him who had devoted all his life to Ram would have written a complete a book on the desecration of the temple if it was true. Why somebody like Tulsidas? They don't talk about it.
Let me respond. Let Mr. Jain respond, and then I want to go to Zamiruddin Shah. Yes,
This question was argued by Rajiv Dhawan before the Supreme Court, and to that our categorical response was that at that time Tulsidas has written the Ramayana itself is a big thing. When invader had invaded India and he had killed so many Hindus, which he has written in his own autobiography Babur Nama, then at that point of time saying that Babur has demolished a Hindu temple would have massacred him further. So what was the purpose of Tulsidas at that point of time? To spread the name of Ram in every house, and precisely that's what has been done. Otherwise today you see so many books being banned, and if that time he would have written that yes, the mosque has been demolished, the mosque has been constructed, and if he would have given all those controversies, that book would have been banned and he wouldn't have been living any further. That's the issue, that's the precise issue which
yes, Mr. Kishore, one moment. Yes,
I want to.
Yes, very quickly. Yes,
I want to respond to that, Rajdeep. Just one small thing.
Please do.
Mr. Vishnu Shankar Jain, you are not trying to understand. Probably you are not aware that Tulsidas was not a contemporary of Babur. He was there during Akbar's time. Babur was long dead and over. And at Akbar's time, don't try to twist. Don't try to twist facts.
I am not trying to twist the facts.
Just a minute.
That was a slave era for us.
My worry with this debate,
and Akbar was not an.
Just a minute. I think
I am
going to request all of you. One of the things that I will not allow in any Ayodhya debate is attempts being made to, in a way, get into a cockfight. Let's not do that. I think the debate in the Supreme Court is a lesson for us of what is possible. Mr. Kishore, I'm coming to you in just a minute, because Zamiruddin Shah, General Shah, I allowed you to set off the debate. And I want you to understand, look at it within few minutes, the heat that it generates. The nature of this debate, while we can call it a title dispute, it has willy-nilly become a political issue. And particularly after the demolition of the Babri Masjid in 1992, it has taken a completely political color. to that extent, what you are pleading for appears to be utopian.
It is utopian, Mr. Rajdeep Sardesai. Let me tell you that people talk about it as a matter of faith. Yes, it is a matter of faith for the Hindus. So is it a matter of faith for the Muslims. I say that court solution should have been the only solution, provided both parties were prepared to accept it. But the Hindu party has never conceded to that. They've never conceded that they would accept a court settlement. The Muslim party has said yes, they would accept a court settlement. I've seen the line of arguments. There's going to be terrible. There's going to be a terrible tragedy for this country in case there are winners and losers. The only sensible solution is an out-of-court settlement with amity so that nobody loses.
You know, I can see where he's coming from. And Kunal Kishore, as an IPS officer who was involved in the negotiations, is it still not? Is mediation simply impossible? I mean, look at the pressure we have put on these 5 judges. These 5 judges are being asked to determine a case which is going to have huge implications. And as someone who covered the 92-93 Mumbai riots, I know exactly what happens when when a criminal act was committed. Let's be honest, the Babri Masjid case is still pending. The criminal case is pending. They want the civil suit to be settled amicably. Is that possible? Is mediation still possible?
No, now it is too late.
Too late?
It is too late. At one time there was a very reasonable solution because I was associated with that. During the days of Mr. Chandrasekhar, when he was Prime Minister, the solution was like this, that Ayodhya will be made one-time exception and an act will be brought to protect all the other religious places.
So the Places of Worship Act will be amended, Ayodhya will be given a special status, all others will, the status quo would have remained.
No, during, it was the idea of Mr. Chandrasekhar after having negotiated with all the parties. But what happened that Chandrasekharji's government fell down within 6 months and the act came during the early months of Mr. Narasimha Rao. Ayodhya was made one-time exception only outside that act for the case only. Ayodhya was not made one-time exception to hand over to the Hindus. So the real solution was lost that time. Thereafter, to me, there has not been...
So you think the solution was, if it had to be done in the way that General Shah is saying should have been done 25 years ago, now it's simply too late to work out that kind of mediatory solution. Irfan Engineer, if you're still with us, as a director for Center of Study of Society and Secularism, do you fear, as a Mumbaikar, as someone who's worked on secular issues, that this issue is now much too polarized and fractured for even a court judgment to resolve the deeper cleavages that exist in our society?
Yes, it is, and it is politicized. The cleavages are not because of religion, not because of faith. If truly faithful people will also be reasonable, will also be accommodative. But now one party is talking from position of strength. Strength because they are in power. Strength because they have a larger, they assemble larger muscles.
Right.
I think tomorrow somebody else will have muscles. History, history is not over in 1 month or 1 year.
So you're saying what the manner in which it has played out in recent times, a sense of political power resulting possibly in a legal verdict, is what troubles you. That this is an example of muscularity being demonstrated by one side. Is that what you're saying?
It does, and if we leave it to real faithful people, those who are not interested in politics, they will find out a solution which is a win-win solution, which is amicable, where everybody is happy and sort of brings a closure to the issue. There will be no closure either way with the Supreme Court judgment or with an act.
So you're saying there will be no closure through a Supreme Court judgment. Do you agree with that, Sharad Pradhan? Because you have tracked this issue since the late 80s in Lucknow. Do you get a sense that particularly with Yogi Adityanath, a votary of the Mandir, now Chief Minister, Narendra Modi, who was the charioteer of the Ram Janmabhoomi agitation and which eventually resulted in the demolition of the mosque, do you believe therefore that this is now a demonstration of political power? Let's not see it purely in terms of what happens in the court. This is also now squarely in the political realm.
Well, that is what the entire right wing is been doing. But mind you, you know, what Jalal Shah said has a lot of meaning. You know, when the mediation process was started, that was the objective behind it. Let us not have losers and winners. And the mediation process, of course, it was not given enough time. But mind you again, when the Supreme Court decided to hold day-to-day hearings, the Chief Justice made it loud and clear that the mediation process could still continue. And that is the reason the Sunni Central Waqf Board's offer that has been made by the chairman today makes sense. And I don't be surprised if tomorrow eventually the Supreme Court takes the recommendations of the mediation panel and incorporates what the Sunni Waqf Board has done in the final judgment. It is still free to do that. And 3 days of this submission of written arguments will be the period during which this can be done. And I have
the lawyer for the Sunni Waqf Board here. Is that possible today, that you may make a written submission tomorrow? Is that at all possible, where you may preconditionally offer to hand over the land? There has been much talk over this.
Arguments will not be pleadings as such.
Not pleading, but a submission.
And if it's a submission has to be made, then it has to be in a proper form of a compromise, as under the Civil Procedure Court. This is a civil suit.
Is that still possible?
First time a first appeal is being heard in the Supreme Court in the history of Supreme Court and the history of judiciary. Never before a first appeal has been heard at the level of the Supreme Court, for the reason that the trial court this time was comprised of 3 High Court judges as per directions of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
But what is relevant is, probably everybody is missed here, what the court said today: 3 days to give your views on molding of relief. Everybody's forgotten that. I have been saying this is.
What does that mean in layman terms?
What he means to say is they are not going to disturb. It means that the Allahabad High Court verdict may not be overturned completely, but the relief
so
will be molded.
one third to Nirmohi Akhada, 1/3 to Ram Lalla or the Ram Janmabhoomi Nyas, and 1/3 to the Sunni Waqf Board is still a possibility.
That is a relief granted. Now they want to mold that relief, because I tell you.
No, so does that remain still the original basis now for whatever the Supreme Court decides?
When it's molded, it would not definitely change. But then I have an indication that they may not set aside the entire judgment of the Supreme Court. Otherwise, there is no question of molding of relief.
So you may have, in cricketing terms, and it's a terrible word in a way, since we have winners or losers, a draw. You know, where both sides get something. I don't get it's a large piece of land. Why is it not possible, as the Allahabad High Court tried through its ingenuity, to create a space where it is possible for both the Hindus and the Muslims?
But that was legally flawed.
It may be legally flawed,
Correct.
but it is what the Supreme Court is looking. They may have to mold it.
That's how I read that molding of relief
is that something
requirement
that you are willing to consider in the written submissions?
As far as Hindu Mahasabha is concerned, our categorical stand is by molding of relief. What the Supreme Court means is that, since what Mr. Anup Jha pointed out is absolutely right, that this is the first appeal, first time ever tried in the Supreme Court. So what they want to know from the parties is that whether by virtue of Article 142 they have the power to do complete justice with the between the parties, and whether by way of molding of the relief can they give some alternative relief other than what the parties have asked for. That's what the phrase molding of the relief means. And therefore, in our case of Section 92, it does not lead to a conclusion that there will be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 again. It can have because of the.
You are not willing to accept the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 argument, presumably.
Not at all.
That's why you got to the Supreme Court, so there's no question of you accepting the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 argument.
Both sides have gone for that.
Rajdeep, I want to tell you one very important fact. The Muslims' case have been dismissed by the Allahabad High Court on the ground of limitation. Nirmohi Akhada's case has been dismissed on the ground of limitation, and then Allahabad High Court has granted 1/3, 1/3 in our suit by decreeing our suit number 5. How can they do that? And that's what precisely our contention, bone of contention is before the Supreme Court.
Is it possible, Mr. Kishore, to look at 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 1/3 even now?
Now it will not be possible, like either technically, legally or practically. One thing I would like to say.
What if the Supreme Court reaffirms the Allahabad High Court judgment? Can they do that? Can they reaffirm the Allahabad High Court judgment? Can they, yes or no? Can they do it? No, just a minute.
I don't think that will come. Only thing I would like to inform that in this tense situation, all my research, which was approved, which was accepted by Justice Sudhir Agarwal of Allahabad High Court,
yes,
in my foreword, which was been accepted by a former Chief Justice of India and former Chief Justice. Babar was a liberal person. He had nothing to do with either demolition of the temple or construction of a mosque. It was done during the days of, let me complete, during the days of Aurangzeb. Babar has been appreciated, praised by 4 Pandits, 2 from Mithila, 1 from...
Let me take a break on that point. You know, because you have added another twist in a way to this debate. It is a contentious debate. At the end of the day, is a solution possible through a court verdict, given the kind of polarization that exists on both facts in a way, strangely enough, but also importantly when it has become a matter of faith. To the Ayodhya debate on a day when the contentious hearing is over, the judgment will be delivered sometime in the next 4 weeks. The big question, can a court judgment really heal the wounds that Ayodhya has set about? You know, Lieutenant General Shah, I must ask you this, because you are an army man. You know how the army was called out after the Babri Masjid was demolished, the riots that took place in Mumbai and other parts. That criminal act, the people responsible for it never got punished. Some of them, in fact, are in political power. So I ask you this. There will be those who will say, how can you actually expect closure till the criminal case is also sorted? Do you believe the civil case alone can heal the wounds that you keep talking about between Hindus and Muslims?
See, firstly, the criminal cases will not result in anything. There'll be just a punishment for the sake of it. It will not act as a deterrent, unfortunately. A civil case will have losers and winners. We need to resolve this problem at the root level, at the grassroots level. And that can only come in case of a negotiated settlement. A court ruling, again I repeat, will have winners and losers, which is something which will generate more tensions. It will generate enmity,
right?
And I think that an out-of-court settlement is vital for the peace and security of our country.
Do you believe also, Mr. Engineer, that there is so much of mistrust on the ground today that a court judgment cannot heal the wounds between Hindus and Muslims? Do you believe the mistrust has reached a level where it cannot heal the wounds?
Yeah, I do believe court judgment is not going to heal the wounds either way. Whoever, it will create winner and loser. But the other point I want to make, Rajdeep, here is that there won't be even a politically negotiated settlement unless there is a grassroots movement of people who are faithful, who realize that all those are screaming that we want one piece of Ayodhya, unless the people realize that these are politically motivated demands,
right?
And these politically motivated people are isolated through grassroots movement. I think majority in this country is not for I win, I must win, we must win.
Okay, I'm having a problem with your audio, sir. I'm having a problem with your audio, unfortunately, but I want to take it to you, Mr. Jain. The majority of these people of this country want peace. They want law and order. They want law and order to be maintained. You've seen what's happened in 1992. Despite that, today you're saying, no, this is a moment, Mandir wahi banayenge. I mean, you know, do you believe this triumphalism? This is not a moment for anyone to win or lose or to express this kind of triumphalism that I'm seeing even in the last few hours.
Absolutely right, whatever you have asked for. And the meaning of Ayodhya is जो कभी ना जीती जा सके. So we are not saying that when we'll win, so there will be crackers burned or there will be a harmony incited.
No, what do you mean by when you'll win? Are you know, it is if. And what is victory?
Case,
I want to know what is victory for you. Only if you allow my way or the highway.
See, for us, victory is when whatever Babur has done in the past is restored and that historical wrong has been rectified by the Supreme Court. For us, that is the victory, and we want that.
Is that not a political? Is that not partly at least political?
This is our case before the Supreme Court.
1 minute.
This
That
is
is
what we
your
have
case.
argued before the Supreme Court.
That is your
and not
case.
just me. Suit number 5. Ramlala
Today I
Virajman has
hear a
argued before
UP
the Supreme
Minister
Court.
Siddharth Nath Singh saying this is the time to correct a historical
Correct.
mistake.
We are of the same line. We are of the same view. And our fact is, it's not about the law and order being disturbed in the country. What you have asked so many questions that what happened on 6th December 1992 must be punished. But the question you have not asked is that who will punish what Babur did in 1528? Who will punish that?
In 2019?
No, and their ancestors and their illegal heirs who are claiming through Babur. The Babri Masjid Action Committee, the Sunni Central Waqf Board, if they are claiming their title through Babur's misdeeds, then who will punish them? Who will punish them? And that's what our relief. That's what our relief. So that's what I'm saying. Our relief is not for punishment, sir. We want that whatever he has done by sword must be rectified by pen. And this is the time to show that the power of pen is mightier than the sword.
We forget the law because the question is after the constitution has come into force.
Yes.
And now the Waqf Act came into force. This is recorded as a Waqf property. Now the question is, how do we erase that?
So you're saying more than a battle between the sword and the pen, this is a matter of the constitution of the country.
And also the law. Now if you're going to say, bypass all law, keep it all aside, throw it away, that's a different matter. But there are some legal issues to be really addressed. And I'm sure the Supreme Court will address those legal issues.
One of the facts that has been stressed in the court was the fact that namaz was not being done there for many years.
Correct.
And that has been used.
Even Supreme Court's own constitution made judgments that irrespective of whether namaz is done or not, once a mosque, always a mosque.
No, this is
that's
no.
what we have- that's what-
No. This is no.
1 minute, yes, Mr. Kishore.
Sir, this is no. Supreme Court had given judgment in 1992.
Yes.
In that Ismail Farooqi case, that there are two types of religious shrines.
Yes.
One, ordinary. It may be temple, mosque, gurudwara, that can be acquired, that is just a property, not more than property. But if there are certain institutions, religious shrines, which are the basic structure, which are integral, the words used are integral and essential part of that religion, then that should be treated differently and reverentially.
No,
this is
okay, let's not debate the issues over, the fact, as you said, is that that the Ismail Farooqi judgment as it stands does put a question mark over whether that land where namaz was not practiced, once a mosque, always a mosque.
No, it is not there. It is not.
Right, sir. Ismail Farooqi judgment says para 85. Ismail Farooqi judgment says para 85. What you have just said, that for offering namaz, mosque is not essential, and that's what precisely Mr. Rajiv Dhawan said, argued before Justice Deepak Mishra, that it should be referred to a larger bench.
Yeah,
So the point is, we are saying once a temple, always a temple. So whose law will prevail?
Yes, very quickly, Mr. Kishore.
Whose law will prevail?
No, if any mosque like Makkah, Medina, or Jerusalem, or any temple, if that is an integral and essential part of the that religion, only then that gets
So that's the exception.
Always a mosque.
Okay, I take your point. It has to be an essential and integral part of the religion. But Sharad Pradhan, away from the etymology of it, the fact is there is politics. You and I are political journalists. At the end of the day, let's cut the chase. This is about politics. The BJP for the longest time has made building a mandir part of its political agenda. They came to power on it. So for them, presumably, this is about an expression of political power. I come back to it. How do you see it playing out politically?
Absolutely.
Irrespective of what the court does, will it still play out politically? Will it still be seen, as General Shah says, a symbol of victory for one side and defeat for the other?
That is what they are doing. From day one, they have been talking about, they've used the temple very systematically in every election. And it is from 2 seats in the parliament to 330 odd today. It is a large part of it is thanks to the temple, which has been used in different ways. The point is that it is a symbol of their power. It is becoming, and it is not so much about, while they talk about Ram Raj, very little is done to actually bring in what is the concept of Raj. It is only about gaining political power.
Right.
Otherwise there was no reason. There was no reason for the mediation process to have been punctured. There is one silver lining. One thing I want to point out.
Yes.
In the I'm sure Rajdeep, you must be aware that the mediation panel, the recommendations that it has given, there is something commonality between the recommendations of the mediation panel and the offer made by the Sunni Waqf Board, which is significant, because the Sunni Waqf Board has laid down three conditions.
Saying very clearly, one of the preconditions, even if they have to hand over the land, there must be no further claims made on any more temples. Now, we don't know whether that would ever happen, given the kind of politics that is playing out.
They're talking of implementing. Rajdeep, they're talking of the implementation of the Places of Worship Act 1991.
Yes, but we know
Mr.
Pradhan, when you have a parliamentary majority and a 2/3 majority, you can overturn the Places of Worship Act tomorrow. So let's not trust our politicians. I want to give General Shah one final...
but if the Supreme Court steps in...
Yeah, even if the Supreme Court steps in... We don't know how the political class will play out. General Shah, final word to you.
Right.
Are you convinced by today's debate? Do you still remain convinced that the time has come for a goodwill gesture?
I am convinced that there is no other solution other than a goodwill gesture. Rajdeep, it is vital for the safety and the peace and harmony of our country that there's an out-of-court settlement.
Okay. Out-of-court settlement, we've run out of time, I'm afraid.
No, only one point I just... Tulsidas did not mention this demolition because during his time, temple was in existence. That is
okay.
mentioned.
Let me leave you therefore with my take.
Okay.
As one of India's longest running cases, the attempt to speedily resolve the Ayodhya dispute should be welcomed in pure legal terms. However, the fact is this case is no longer a matter of law as much as it is of politics. A title dispute as to who owns the contentious land has been converted into an issue of faith, which gives the case a completely different dimension. In a sense, the case is now squarely positioned as Hindus versus Muslims rather than a matter of law. Far too much blood has been spilt as a result, more so after the manner in which the Babri Masjid was demolished in 1992 and the horrific riots that followed. That act was one of pure criminality in the name of religious identity, the final step of the political mobilization that preceded it. Those responsible for it have still not been punished. Indeed, some of them have occupied high political office subsequently. So while the criminal case remains unsettled, the civil dispute is being decided forthwith within the next month, which is why the scars may not be fully settled either way by a court judgment. The danger, in fact, of it widening the communal divide is real, which is also why this is a moment where political sagacity must prevail over any sense of triumphalism and chest thumping. Whatever decision the judges take, this is a matter which will ultimately play out in the public domain. Only an alert, enlightened citizenry can ensure that coarse politics doesn't score over constitutional rights. You don't build a new India, my friends, by bullying majoritarianism or reactive minoritism. The two communities will still have to work together. Only then really will you get any kind of closure. That's time to close the bulletin. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you would love to.